Hi YouTube, I've been a little bit behind on the Overwatch news. I've been busy giving some exams. However, I have a bit of a break period where I can definitely take a breather. And speaking of take a breather, Roadhog has been nerfed. It's a decent nerf. It doesn't actually solve his problems, but we'll talk about Roadhog a little bit in another video. Today we're going to be talking about the AMA that was held by the balance team and every question that was answered, excuse me. And first of all, shoutouts to Mango X for actually compiling this in one big, go. So let's not waste any time and get into it. So somebody started with, it's not related to Season 10 balance changes, but I'm going to ask anyway. Were we secretly testing anything new in Mirror Watch event for any new heroes or, reworks? Alec Dawson replies and says, no secret testing of anything upcoming in the immediate. We do look at how changes play out, though when they become more real and get lots of games. I think the Bastion Ultimate in particular was quite fun, even if very loud and on the border technically. And Reinhardt's Frenzy passive was also something we played with internally, but it was quite hard to communicate effectively. It's always good to see what people are excited about when there are more wacky ideas such as Mirror Watch or April Fool's. Some of these things could become real down the line. Now, what I do believe is him saying this, some of those could become real down the line. He's 100% alluding to the fact that changes that make sense. So I think Ryan's Frenzy passive and Ana's Nate change, these are by far two things that could easily become real down the line. Hey guys, let me know in the comment sections down below. What else do you think from the April Fool's, Mirror Watch, or any patches that we've had, that's a little bit crazy and wacky, do you think could become real in the future for some of our characters? Again, I think Ryan's Frenzy and Ana's Nate change to being a heal reduction, it might not be that far off. You never know, it might not be that far off. Moving on, next question is, who is the hardest character to balance and tweak out of the three roles? Okay, before I even read it, it's Sombra. Probably Sombra. Oh yeah, that's for sure. Probably Sombra due to the permanent invis, restricting how deadly we can make her, but also because she's a hero that excels with strong team coordination. Exactly. She's been in and out of the metas at high levels of play for a very long time. There are a handful of other heroes with performance stats that differ greatly from the broader community perception of them, and that can create difficulty in how we approach balancing them as well. So he says over here, there's a handful of other heroes with performance stats that differ greatly from the broader community perception of them, and that can create difficulty in how we approach balancing them as well. This is interesting. I would really like it if comments like this were more broken down and in detail. Saying something as egregious as this without even giving an example is a bit silly. Like, what if he said that, oh yeah, well, our data shows that this character is actually very strong, but the community thinks it's weak, so we don't know what to do over there. Like, I feel like that type of honesty would be really, really appreciated, because I don't like the fact that, well, this is Josh No commenting here, that they're a little bit more, vague about these things. So, next question is, I know you guys mentioned 2 upcoming DPS hero reworks. Is there any news on who they are, blah, 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 that type of stuff. Alec Dawson responds and says that the 2 upcoming reworks are for Cassidy and Reaper. Yes, I called this, by the way. I've been saying this for multiple videos now that, anytime we talked about the DPS is getting reworked, I said that they already told us that Cass was getting it, and they hinted at Reaper getting it, so clearly they're working on them. So Alec Dawson says for Cassidy, we started some exploration pre-season 9 for his update due to where he was at the time. This update was originally looking at multiple pieces of his kit, but we saw the season 9 changes largely benefiting him, so the update has gotten more focused on Magnetic Grenade and other quality of life changes. In season 11, we are updating the Magnetic Grenade. It will behave closer to old oh boy. No homing on the target using the short range and will slow hit the target. Wait. So, does he mean this from the POV that it's going to work like Flashbang where you have to throw it and land it on someone? Like it has to actually hit the target? Or is it like, oh, it's going to have the same massive radius that Flashbang had, but instead of them getting stunned, they'll just get slowed and hindered? I don't know if isn't that like a buff? Like, isn't that it's a big buff to the hinder? It's like a mini EMP that you can throw out and before you have to somewhat line it up and aim it with the mag grenade. But now you can just genuinely throw it and it'll pre-explode, and then the explosion radius will hinder one or maybe multiple targets. Okay, this is a little bit concerning. We're going to have to see how this one plays out. Anyways, he goes on to say that we think that plays a lot better with his kit to remove some of the larger frustrations around mag grenade. More specifics on all that soon. Okay, so I'm going to reserve judgment until I see everything. Otherwise, I'm going to make myself look stupid. Alright, so it goes on to say, for Reaper, we went fairly wide as well in the beginning and then started to focus closely on updating Shadow. Oh my god. Oh my god, Reaper's problem is not Shadow's step. For the love of God, why are they so disconnected from the community? Please tell me he understands Reaper's problem. At the moment, we have something we quite like, but it's a large technical challenge, and we're in the process of planning out work, seeing what's possible. In the meantime, we may buff Reaper in some non-tank buster ways, as he lost a lot in the most recent update. But that's not going to solve his problem. How can you say this in the same sentence? We may buff Reaper in some non-tank buster ways because he lost a lot in the most recent update. So you're literally saying Reaper lost a lot of damage in the recent update, and then you proceed to go say, but we're going to buff him up in non-tank buster ways. So how are you solving his problem? You're just saying that we might buff up other things. We might buff up his movement, this and that, but we're not going to buff up the thing where he's clearly struggling. That's ridiculous, man. I'm sorry. Like, I want to see these buffs, but again, it's those things where they're buffing the wrong parts of the kit. All Reaper needs is a spread tightened up. In Season 1, it was a bit too strong because of the way the HP pools and everything work. I think now we can definitely experiment and put him back to that same spread and at least try to see how he feels, because we've updated the game so much. The HPs have gone up, the armor is stronger a little bit against melee damage. Again, experiment, Blizzard. Don't be scared to just raw buff damage, man. Anyways, whatever. So Cass and Reaper, they're basically confirmed for buffs, whether we like it or not. We will see. Oh, by the way, just also one more thing to note. We're constantly reworking characters for 5v5. Thumbs up. Anyways, moving on. What is the average rank of your playtesters and what level of input? Oh, I don't even want to read this. I hate that this question is asked all the time and they always respond with the same garbage. A wide range of players from GM1 to Bronze 5. It's been a while since we've taken an official poll on the average rank, but it does help us prevent tunnel visioning. Yeah, okay, well, if you were able to tunnel vision specific ranks, you'd actually solve the problems in the game. I'm sorry, like, this question and their responses to it always, like, makes me a little bit upset. Moving on. Okay, two-part question here. Why the inconsistency with dev comments and explanations for the ban changes? Thank God somebody asked this. Thank God somebody asked this. Holy crap, thank God somebody asked this. Anyways, the question goes on to say, there have been many changes that have been questionable. Biggest offender was buffing Sojourn and Jan when she was widely considered the best DPS. That was shipped with zero explanation. Justifying these changes would help a lot with player perception so we can understand these discrepancies. By the way, they still haven't nerfed Sojourn. Anyways, I have to ask what is going on with Symmetra. She's weak, then buffed, then immediately reverted, now silenced. Is she getting reworked? What data shows she needed a nerf? Is she super weak and hard to use on ladder? And was only played in OWCS from Mauga? Shouldn't nerfing Mauga have been enough? Alec Dawson responds and says, we should do a better job about this, especially when it comes to getting the community visibility on what we are seeing versus what the player base may seem to think is the best to at any given time. Oh my God! I really hope people call this out. Let's read this again. We should do a better job, especially when it comes to the community's perception of what we are seeing. Getting the community's visibility on what we are seeing versus what the player base thinks is the best hero at given one time. How can you sit there and try to pull this on the community like, oh, you guys might not know who the best hero is? We do, because data doesn't always reflect. Oh my God. Okay, let's move on. He goes on to say these can differ regularly as certain heroes get power reputations weaker or stronger than their reality at any given rank. Excellent. How Hanzo and Genji are absolute dog shit, but because gold players keep walking in straight lines, we have to nerf them to irrelevancy. Great job. Anyways, that are hard to shake off. Thanks for the feedback. We'll make sure we have something here, even if it's a simple change. Symmetra kept some buffs in that patch, but yes, we hear the feedback of her current power level. We may have been overreactive to Mauga comps during that time frame. He was overtuned, but we wanted to be sure. For right now, we are in discussion about Sim and her frontline presence. Believe that's a piece of the kit we'd like to promote further, whether it's her survivability or beam damage. For the love of God, for the love of God, for the love of God, buff the beam damage and then leave Sim alone. Holy crap. Like, she doesn't need survivability. Don't make her annoying or tanky to play against. She's a DPS. Give her damage, make people respect her. Okay, she takes a while to charge up her beam. Please, for the love of God, give her the beam damage or increase her ramp up time. Please, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. The next question is, why was Smurf detection essentially removed from MMR adjustment, especially for newcomers? GM level players taking 60 plus games to reach their proper ranks has ruined so many more games. It feels like climbing is artificially slowed down. I was saying this at the start of the season, by the way. So many more people will play if they should have reached a higher rank many games ago. Alex says that he talked to Gavin Winter about this, and Gavin had this to say: there hasn't been any changes to the system, but there are edge cases, like for example Gushe that has recently posted in this subreddit, where our systems don't perform in the way we'd like. Most players will still be placed appropriately as they transition from quick play to comp play, but unfortunately cases like this have been possible. Explaining exactly how this happens would make it easier to reproduce, so you'll have to excuse me for not going into intricate detail here. Okay, anyway, so Alec Dawson goes on to say, for the second part of the question, we believe we made it slightly too difficult to climb at the highest ranks, and we're looking at making some adjustments soon. I have a lot to say about the matchmaker. I have a lot to say about the matchmaker, but this isn't the video. We'll get back to it a little bit later. So Alec Dawson, now Josh No gets asked a question where he says, will you ever make pick rates and win rates public, even a couple of weeks after the fact? I feel like it would help a lot for people to understand why changes are made. Is there a win rate range you want to keep all heroes within? So Josh No replies that there's not any plans to do something like that. And while sites like Overbuff don't have the complete picture, there is data in there for win rates that is fairly close. There you go. So we've got confirmation that Overbuff is pretty relevantly close to their data, which is nice. Now, there's some argument about against being too transparent with those stats, that it can create a bit of a feedback loop where you might see player behavior driven by what appears to be meta in the stats. But no player looks at the stats, though, by this logic of saying something like, well, people might start picking characters based on data. That's not how it works, brother. Brig has the highest win rate on support. Is she the meta support? No, right? Because, like, she's played in certain situations. My God, man. This is the problem with having people that just look at numbers all the time and don't play the game properly, whatever. But that kind of happens already with just a general discussion and sentiment around heroes without stats as well. Congratulations. It's almost like people play the game, get a feeling for the character, and that dictates whether they're good or not. Congratulations. But imagine playing the game. Anyways, our target range for heroes win rate is between 45 to 55% unmirrored win rate at a master's rank and above. These individual win rates can fluctuate 2 to 3% by day, mostly because heroes tend to have a wider range of win rates per map, and we're looking at a global average of those, but also individual performance. Player performance isn't always consistent. Lower pick rate heroes fluctuate more, and there's less confidence in their win rate being indicative of actual strength. Extremely high pick rate heroes also have a similar problem when looking at mirror stats. In the end, stats require interpretation to understand their context, and that's why that's not the only basis for balance changes, but is a useful tool to measure the impact of changes patch over patch. Yeah, but I'm not trying to use this video as I'm going to shit talk the devs, but it's so silly to say something like, well, we don't always just use stats. Well, when was the last time that they made a change where they cited that it wasn't like related to their data, except maybe like the current Sigma change that came through, where they just decided that, well, what if we just broke Sigma's ult and removed counterplay? Like, I'm sure they didn't need to see any stats for that, but again, whatever. Let's move on with our lives. So I believe this was 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿's question where he just talked about Hanzo. Let's go and it's Hanzo basically explaining why, 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿 explaining why Hanzo's bad. Now let's go on to explain what Josh No had said to 𝐒𝐿𝐻𝐿, if I'm not mistaken. So he said Hanzo is still an effective mid-range burst damage hero even without the one-shot kills. Post Season 9 with the projectile size changes actually saw an increase in Hanzo's performance on stat side. I do hear you on the loss of how good the one-shot kills felt, but an overarching goal of Season 9 was to reduce a lot of those burst damage frustrations for players on the receiving end of it. Wait. Before I continue reading this answer, excuse me, but an overarching goal of Season 9 is to reduce a lot of the burst damage frustrations for players on the receiving end. Then why isn't Sojourn nerfed? Sojourn gets to keep her one shot, but you guys will be picky about who gets to keep it and who doesn't. This is so hypocrisy. This is such hypocrisy. It's insane to the point that I can't even speak proper English anymore. I might need to start speaking Arabic or Urdu in a second here so I can try to explain my frustration. But oh my God, like, I just love how they contradict themselves. Like, okay, we don't want these characters to have one shot, but these other characters, yeah, well, they can burst you down without a problem. Like, fuck Genji, fuck Hanzo, fuck Zanka, excuse me for the language here, okay? But Roadhog, Widowmaker, and Soldier, they can keep it, like, we like these characters. We do not have a bias, but we think these characters need the one-shot abilities. Alright, whatever. Alright, let's move on. So, he goes on to say, armor changes in Season 10 also benefited his damage. Yeah, like, slightly. This is still, we're very early, but we've been experimenting with adjusting health pools for some of the more evasive or high DPS heroes, which would put them back in the range of Hanzo's lethal headshots, and some other hero combos at 225. But while it would bring some interesting texture to hero interactions overall, there's also a bunch of other problems to solve if you want to go through with it. Nice. So all the changes we made with the HP pools was completely pointless, because now they're saying that, well, you know what, like certain, okay, by the way, this is clearly the dive. So I think Sombra, Tracer, Genji right away will get the HP changes. I think all of them will go down, because as per usual, Blizzard has no direction with the balance of the game. And I want to see any like pro 5v5er defend this. They're already admitting that, oh yeah, well, you know what, maybe Tracer having a bit more HP is a bit ridiculous. Maybe Genji, or maybe this or that, we might have to start toning them down. But when you say something like more evasive and high damage heroes, what about the supports that are evasive? What about Kiriko? Huh? What about Kiriko? She has the skinniest hitbox in the game, okay? And she has like how many ways to survive, okay? Like, do I really need to go on? Like, are we just gonna limit this to the damage heroes? Like, we just can never have damage heroes be in a good spot unless you're hit scan. I mean, we'll see what they do, but this is ridiculous. They cannot even commit to their own balance changes without thinking that they might have done something stupid. Oh my god, all we have to do is go back to 6v6, but apparently that's too difficult. Anyways, moving on, next question is about a month later. Oh, you know what, I don't care about the Wrecking Ball questions, I'm sorry. We already got the Hawk changes, so I'm going to skip this question. I do not care about this question either. It's practically pointless because Alec Dawson just says a lot of nothing. Okay, I'll try to ask some general questions. Nothing relevant here. I do not care. They actually want to know some things about balance changes. You know, they just go on to talk about changes about Hog, which we already know about, and they're experimenting with live fever buffs, trying to give maybe Petal Platform like a damage boost or something, attack speed increase to make it a little bit more like team oriented, but you know, they can't get it to work. So maybe like at some point we will get a live fever buff. So he goes on, a question, I believe this is 𝐒𝐿𝐶's question, which 𝐒𝐿𝐶 basically asked, is the team looking at Mercy at all? For any changes or small buffs, what is Mercy's pick rate and win rate now compared to Season 3? Back in mid-season 9, blah, 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 blah. You know, nerfs were reverted, Mercy stayed the same. The community has been ranking Mercy as a D-tier support for a few seasons. She's in this weird spot, blah, 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 blah. Thank you. Let me know your comments. So Alec Dawson responds, like, okay, look, if you guys want the TLDR version, she's basically asking, like, Mercy's kind of in a really bad spot. Are you guys going to buff her? Okay, like, she's been pretty shit and everybody's rating her really, really low. So Alec Dawson responds and says, number one, I think we're more than happy in the DPS passive where it is at 20%, more than 15%. So Mercy is worth a look at when that world is permanent. Okay, so she's that's the permanent world. Like, we're sticking with 20% DPS passive. So let's look at Mercy then. He goes on to say there are some questions of how far we can push her movement and know that that is one of the most requested changes. Man, look, Mercy community, I love you guys, and I get that you guys love the movement, okay? But you have to understand, changing up her movement is not going to solve her problem where she's struggling with breakpoints. I feel like a lot of people struggle to understand this. It's why Genji feels bad. It's why Hanzo feels bad. It's that the damage number registering against bigger HP pools feels worse. And the same is happening with Mercy. Is she's struggling to register her numbers in time in the new HP pool passive with, you know, with the new HP pools and the DPS passive. I don't think giving her more movement is going to solve her problem. It just makes her more frustrating to play against. Okay, anyways, he goes on to say, Mercy is still a top picked 3 out of 4 support and even higher on console until you hit GM top 500. Her performance follows a similar trend where she's in the top grouping for most ranks and remains above average at the highest ranks. Doesn't mean that she won't receive changes, but this is where she's currently at. Again, this is where they need to understand that Mercy is just a popular hero. That doesn't necessarily reflect that the hero is good or bad. It just means people like playing the character. Please, Blizzard, understand that. It's really not that hard. Oh my god. Okay, so the final question, and then we're going to call it for the video, is a person basically asked, I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to ask this, but is the current balance team confident about being able to fix the biggest problems of the tank role since, you know, like the tank role has been suffering since Overwatch 2 release? The question is basically referring to counter swapping and also unhealthy tank designs being allowed to exist, like tank busters and unkillable tanks like Hog, Maug, and Rissa. And he says, are we confident that making these tanks do everything is the right thing? Are we confident that making fun tank again for the player base? He says, are we confident that we can make tank fun again for the majority of the player base without straight up buffs? And is the headshot reduction and knockback reduction changes are especially interesting to me because I really don't think that simple number changes will fix how tank feels to play. I don't want to counter swap. I don't want to face unkillable and easy to play tanks. I don't want tank busters. I really love this game, but it feels like we're going in the wrong direction while ignoring big spawn. Thank you. Thank you that somebody grew the pair to genuinely ask this question, and then thank you to Blizzard for responding. So let's see what Josh Snow has to say. Also, the fact that Josh Snow chooses to answer this question, doesn't this basically mean that Josh Snow is the one whose vision is the balance team's vision? Like, I thought this was something that Alec would respond to, but Josh chooses to do it. Anyways, at its core, Overwatch is a game designed around being able to swap heroes to gain a tactical advantage or help solve a challenge you might be encountering. That is not how you guys promoted it 1 year ago, but let's go with that line now. Anyway, so he goes on to say, this contributes to keeping the moment-to-momentum gameplay experience dynamic. It drives hero diversity and offers a wider range of both strategic gameplay and skill expression in learning when, where, how to play multiple heroes. There's a question of how much an advantage is too much compared to the cost of switching. Ideally, we want counters to be clear and understandable, but soft enough that it's still possible to outplay a disadvantaged matchup. It is a team game though, and 1v1 matchups are not the highest priority when assessing the heroes. Tanks do feel this the most, as there's only one of them per the 5v5 role queue, but all roles experience pressure to be countered or countered to an extent. We're striving to find a balance between swapping heroes every death, which certainly feels too often, and rarely swapping heroes, or getting trapped in mirror matches, which quickly leads to fatigue. We've seen a lot of improvements here compared to early seasons, but it could always be better. Unhealthy and unpopular designs are not necessarily the same thing. What? What? Whatever, let's see what he says. When designing heroes, we aim to provide a wide range of playstyles, mechanics, and aesthetics for people to enjoy. It's okay if it doesn't resonate with everybody. We'll do our best to make the game as fun as it can be for a wider audience. But how are you gonna make the game more fun by creating characters that can do? So there's two things to take away from this. He already said that, yeah, well, it sucks that we create tank busters and these characters that can do everything, but you have to understand people want to play these type of things, bro. Like, oh my god, like this is such a disconnected take on their part. It's insane. Like, you have to understand, we know it's gonna ruin it for 90% of the player base, but you know those 10% that may want to try it. Yeah, well, we care about that 10%, and you better sit there and you better just deal with it, okay? Because you can counter swap too. That's literally his response. Is, yeah, screw you, just get good at counter swapping, bro. Like, we're striving to find a balance, but like, you know, it is what it is. Just counter swap, bro. And he doesn't even say that, no, we will fix that direction of the game. He legitimately just says, yeah, just counter swap. It is what it is. I can't believe we're stuck with this balance team. I genuinely cannot believe that we're stuck with this balance team where they say so much and like they talk a lot, but very little comes out in terms of any form of confidence or vision as to they know what to do with the game. I'm sorry, but I don't have hope in this balance team. I think they need a new leader, a new vision who understands how to take this game going forward, and understand that this is not the type of game that you can just, well, we have a wider audience, so we're just going to try and squeeze in every playstyle. I think you have to definitely prioritize gameplay experience rather than hero fantasy. And on that same note, well, what about the hero fantasies that have been completely lost, that we're constantly reworking character per character per character in order to make them fit the 5v5? It's still not too late to go back to 6v6 and start from scratch and go from there. It's still not too late, and start from scratch from the POV that we balance 6v6 in an active way. I think this balance team is perfect for 6v6, but even they don't realize it. That's the funny thing. I don't think this balance team realizes that they're so good for 6v6, but they just don't know it because they're stubborn about staying in 5v5. Anyways, everybody, that's going to be it for this video. What are your thoughts on these balance changes? What are your thoughts that in the near future, we're just going to keep reworking characters? But, you know, guys, 5v5 saved the game. It made it better. All we had to do was one by one rework everybody. Some people are so delusional when they say shit like this. Anyways, with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.